Oh, Michelle. Hey, Shauna. Afternoon, Catherine. Hello. I'll just wait a minute or two in case there are others that are joining us this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Michelle, where are you coming to us from? Everybody hear me okay? I think you can either type in chat or you can, I've enabled microphones. Hi, Catherine. If you prefer to type in chat, that's totally fine. If you want to say hello, that's great too. We'll wait about one more minute just in case there's anyone else. Oh, and there is. Afternoon, Susan. Hi, how are you? Oh,
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
excellent. Nice to hear your voice, Susan. Michelle, can you hear me okay? She might have to. Michelle, are you able to hear me now or no? There should be. Oh, maybe I need to turn my volume up. Am I very quiet, everyone? Is that better?
No, you sound fine to me.
It might be the volume on your own device, Michelle. I did turn myself up a little bit though. Oh, there we go. Okay, I guess we'll get started. So welcome everybody. Thanks for making time this afternoon. I know everybody's very busy and it's just after a long weekend. So it looks like everybody's here so far. I will get everyone, if you can, to put your microphones on mute, just so we don't end up with any background noise, and we'll dive right in. So introducing myself, I'm Heather Dusome. I'm the Field Operations Manager at MaxSold. So I'll be leading the session today for about 45 minutes or so. I also have Shauna here, who is Field Ops. So she will jump in if I need any assistance at all. So thank you, Shauna, for coming this afternoon. And thanks again to all of you for making some time today. I'm not sure if all of you are brand new or not to working with MaxSold. Some of you may have already started an auction or have something underway, or you're completely brand new and this is your first opportunity to learn a little bit about how to execute on your auctions. So your time and partnership mean a lot to us, and so we're here to support you on that journey. So having said that, we'll move into what we're going to cover today. So hopefully you can all see the screen okay. It should be showing a table of contents. So today's webinar is designed to set you up for that success that I was just talking about. We're going to walk through the key parts of the auction process. So that setup, some cataloging tips, and pickup day logistics so you can feel confident and prepared and efficient at every step of the journey. There's also a webinar, I believe, tomorrow that Cesar leads. That's all about the app. So I highly encourage you to participate in that if you haven't done so already. We also encourage you to take advantage of our learning platform. So that's Teachable, which has more in-depth guidance than I can deliver on the call today in 45 minutes. So there's a lots more information on the topics that we're going to cover, and then several others as well. So that's there for you as a tool and a resource. So we'll scoot right in to our 4-step process. So MaxSold Seller app guides you through the whole process of auction creation and management. And within those 4 steps, we have lot setup. So that's organization and grouping of your auction items, catalog creation, so that's the process of photographing and describing your lots by either using our smart cataloging AI or manual cataloging in the seller app. And then from there, you review and set dates, and finally host the pickup day, which is the last part of the process. So moving on to setting up for a successful auction. So this is the start of it all. When a site is well organized, everything just becomes easier. So that's lotting, photography, and cataloging. This is why site setup really matters. If it's disorganized, you might run into delays. You also might miss some valuable items, and it could even potentially reduce the auction's final value. So think of setup as your launch pad. If you're new to this, when you get this part right, the rest of the auction just naturally falls into place. So organizing the space. First, go through the site and separate what's for sale from what's not for sale. Remove any garbage, get rid of anything that doesn't belong. So this could mean things like personal paperwork for your clients, documents, family photos, etc. Things that you know are not going to be in the auction. Any items that you're unsure of, for guidance, we do have a reference list called the item policies list. And this is a full list of what can and can't be sold on our platform. And it's located on the support page on the website. We also reference it in that Teachable learning platform that I was talking about. There's a section on item policies list, and the link is in there as well too for reference if should you need to look at it. So once organizing is complete, make sure every item is unwrapped, visible, and within easy reach for cataloging. Some of you may have teams doing this, depending on your business. Some of you may be doing this on your own, but we highly recommend that nothing should be buried in boxes because it'll just speed up the process for you as you go along in terms of photographing and cataloging. Tackling the tough spots first. So we do recommend starting with the hardest areas first. Human nature, we always like to shoot to the easiest and then continue on, and then we start to lose steam. So we do suggest that starting those hard areas first. So places like garages, basements, sheds, outbuildings, if you have any, that will be included in the auction. So anywhere that's cluttered, dusty, or hard to access because of the volume. Tackling these areas first will help you stay on schedule and avoid any fatigue as you come to the end and then realize, oh, the largest part of this is still remaining and I have to go through it all. So next up is part of setting up for success is what's a lot? So a lot is just a group of similar or related items. They could be kitchenware items, glassware, books, tools, etc., you name it. The key here is to aim for an average auction value of at least $35 per lot. So that's not retail value, but actual auction value based on buyer behavior. If you find a lot is too small, consider combining it with other related items. If it's too large or too mixed, you might consider splitting it up. Your goal at the end of the day is to create a clean and logical grouping that offers clear value to bidders. So you'll see sort of a picture example on the screen. The bottom lot could use a little improvement. There's a lot included in there. A better lot would just have been the pair of lamps on its own because a buyer might just be looking for lamps and isn't looking for all the extras that were included in the original lot. Lotting or grouping is where the strategy comes in. As an example, group things like books with books. So it could be like books all together, historical books, etc. China with China. One small exception to this would be art. So art that's already hanging on the wall, it's best to leave it there or advise your client it's not necessary to remove it unless it's very high. This avoids taking everything off the walls and stacking it along the floor or along the wall, base of the wall, which makes it more difficult for you or your team to catalog. Steer clear of tiny, like I was mentioning, or singular item lots, unless the item is of really high value. So that could be maybe a piece of sterling silver, a piece of jewelry, or a quality watch. Those things are definitely going to be beyond that $35 value so that you could put those as single lot items on their own. We do suggest using painter's tape. Again, it's only a suggestion, you don't have to, but it is very helpful to mark out each lot particularly if you have a situation or a client where it's a very dense area for cataloging. It makes it easier to catalog. It's easy to understand as you photograph what is included within the lot. And then it's also beneficial when you come to pick up, because it's very clear what is part of the lot and what is not if things are very, very close together. A few important reminders. So during setup, items that are in cupboards can stay in the cupboards, but box contents should be unpacked unless the entire box is being sold as one lot. So an example of that might be Tupperware or Lego. You wouldn't dump all those out and spread them out on a surface if you're running low on surfaces. You could leave those items in a box and it would just be one lot for that box. Hi, Maria. Welcome. So hardwired or mounted items, so things like light fixtures or TV wall mounts, they should be disconnected before pickup, but ideally we recommend prior to being cataloged. Then you know that it's not something that you have to follow up with or come back to between cataloging and pickup. If you're able to do it before cataloging even starts, then you know that it's done and it's something that you don't have to circle back to. Keep track of how many lots you create in each room. So for my field team, what they do is make a simple site map. So this can be as easy as just a loose leaf piece of paper, or maybe it's a sticky note. This helps your cataloging team and streamlines the pickup later on. And what you would do is put the lot numbers that correspond to each room that's being worked on, so you can very quickly identify where a particular lot is. Another thing to remember in terms of going through and cataloging is to remember that items need to remain where they are throughout the duration of the process. So if you do have a client who is living still in the home, you want to make sure that they're still able to use those living quarters, etc., while the auction is live and things are displayed out after they're done being cataloged. So maximizing value and efficiency, if you want to boost the auction's performance, focus on lotting of valuable items. So like I was mentioning earlier, lot things like jewelry or sterling or maybe high-end tools, etc., separately when it's appropriate. If you have a huge pile of tools, you could maybe break it down by category or purpose. So that could be maybe all woodworking tools together, maybe all antique tools together. This way that you'll get better results because you're speaking to one specific section of individuals who might be looking for those items. If you can, use every available flat surface. So tables, if you have folding tables that you can use, we highly recommend that. Or you can put things on the floor to stage items. But again, just being mindful of the environment, especially if the site is still occupied by the owners. Some partners also use stackable plastic shelving units, which can easily be built and then torn down after everything is done. These help display unpacked lots, and they end up taking advantage of the vertical space in your auction space, as opposed to having to spread everything out horizontally. So they can be very, very helpful. So wrapping up this one section, closing out, great auctions start with great setup. So remember, prep is your power tool, whether you're doing it on your own or you have people assisting you doing it. Having a really good setup sets you up for success right out of the gate. Does anybody have any questions? Michelle, you're good with you, okay? Awesome. I will move on to the next section if everyone's okay. Feel free to throw questions in chat if you need to, or speak out. Michelle, did you have a question?
No, I lost audio, so I called.
Oh, okay,
sorry. No, that's okay.
So pillars of auction strategy. So that's volume, variety, and value. This is the way to maximize success of every auction that you manage. So these pillars bring a strong auction strategy. And so when you apply them together, you can increase traffic, attract more bidders, and drive higher final sale prices. So we're going to go through each of these and break them down. So the first one up is volume. You'll see examples of items that have sold on our platform and what the GMV was. Some of these are in Canadian dollars, some are in USD. So in terms of volume, more lots generally means more bidding. So we recommend a minimum of 75 auction lots per sale. And why do we do this? It's because the volume can create momentum for your auction. So with more lots, you increase the chances that every bidder finds something that they could potentially be interested in. So if you think of it like this, if an auction only has about 30 items in it and you were a buyer, you might click through and leave in a few seconds because there just doesn't seem to be a lot there. But if there are 75, 100, or more than that, you're more likely to stick around, scroll through, and potentially start bidding. So when you're working with your seller, counsel them to include as much as possible. Don't necessarily discard items that you might think seem small or secondary. If you lot them and group them smartly, like I was talking about earlier, they can still create great value for your seller. Oops, accidentally skipped one. Second is variety. So a successful auction appeals to as many buyer interests as possible. The broader the range of items, the more types of buyers that you'll attract, and then that can translate to more bidding. So even things like outdoor items, potentially, barbecue grills, gardening gear, especially if it's a seasonal time of year, those items can do well as well. So this isn't just about having a full catalog, it's about having something that catches the eye of every kind of bidder. And so you can see a few examples on the screen as well. There's some silverware, there's some tools, look like some woodworking tools, and Pyrex up at the top, and then of course some furniture in here as well too. So the more you can diversify, the better it is. Then the last one is value. So encourage your sellers to include standout items when possible. As you can see on the screen, we sell vehicles. So if your client has a vehicle, it would be great to consider putting that in as well too. So these items bring increased site traffic, more attention, and that means more eyes on every lot, whether it's a large lot or a small lot. These are the pieces that people search for. They're watching the site to see if they come up, and they will potentially compete over items if more than one person is very interested in something, which is never a bad thing. So in other words, one high value piece can lift the entire auction. So a takeaway from all of these 3 V's is if you want to run a really strong auction every time, it's always best to lean into that volume, variety, and value. If you can't have all 3 and you're really good with 2 out of the 3, that's still great. But the goal is to try and hit those marks each and every time you have an auction. So when your client hits all 3, you're setting them up for success. You're creating the kind of auction experience that buyers will keep coming back for. Again, some examples on the screen. So there's some silverware, some coins, some jewelry. I believe that's a gold chain that was sold for $4,251. I'm sure that was probably a heavyweight carat. But those are things that can help pull up your sale. If a client has a vehicle, is there a set price? It does actually start at $1, and that's something that you can talk to your partner support person about in terms of how to discuss that with your client. We do have a Sprinter van currently with one of our partners, and forgive me, Shauna, you may remember the amount. We just talked about it about an hour ago. It started out at $1, and I believe it's at 40. Is that correct, Shauna? It's currently sitting at 40,000. Yes, that's right. So hopefully that answers your question, Catherine. Okay, perfect. So talking about cataloging, so lot titles, descriptions, and then we'll go through some final reminders. So this is how buyers find what they're looking for when you talk about titles and descriptions. So strong, standardized titles, accurate descriptions don't just help items sell, they also, on the reverse end, reduce any refunds, build trust, and ensure a smooth experience for everybody who's involved. So having those on point is super important. So your lot title is the first thing a buyer sees. It's what shows up in search results. And so you want your titles to be very clear, keyword rich, and consistent. So some important things to keep in mind: if there's a brand name to the item or items within a lot, use those brand names in the title because they will help with searchability. We advise to avoid vague or generic terms. So things like lot, miscellaneous, decor, or knickknacks, because those don't really support search engine optimization. Most people are not going to type in decor because it's such a broad term and could just pull up literally anything. If you need to use terms like antique or vintage, make sure that it's very clear that you know that it's antique or vintage, or if it's something that has a specific wood, absolutely you can put that in the title or the description, but make sure that you're 100% sure that it is the wood that you're describing it as. So quick example on the screen again, it's a brand, but we've got Food Saver in the title, and then we've got a really good description saying that it also includes the bags, etc., and as well the measurements. So that's titles. Descriptions, it's all about setting clear expectations. So descriptions gives buyers the details they need to make an informed bid. A strong description helps prevent confusion, avoids refund issues again, and protects everyone involved. I always like to tell my team, and I've said this from the beginning when I was with the auction team as well too, take your photos as if you didn't have a description. You want to capture everything, including damage, etc., to make sure that it's a well-rounded picture of what someone is bidding on. And the same thing, if you couldn't have the photos, you want to write your description as best as possible so it gives a very clear understanding to the buyer what it is that they're going to be bidding on. So sticking to the facts is important. As best as possible, avoid opinions like things like rare or beautiful or cool, because beautiful or cool to one person may not be beautiful or cool to another individual. And it's also just sort of taking up room from having those other facts in the description. If it's something that's electrical or mechanical, describe it as untested unless the seller has stated it works. So if your client tells you, hey, this works, that's great. You can add in working as per seller. But otherwise, we would advise putting in the word untested if you're not able to test it. For things like books, if you're going through descriptions, do your best to list the genre. So it could be a lot of mystery books or children's books or cookbooks, like I was mentioning earlier. If you're describing jewelry, flatware, or serving pieces, only call something silver or gold if it's clearly marked. Sometimes there's an issue with someone describing something as silver because it's a silver color, but then an assumption can be made if it's one of those things like jewelry, flatware, or serving pieces, that an individual buyer might think it's sterling silver, and it's actually not. It was just silver in color. So designating those is very important. So if it's silver gold, if it's clearly marked, it's got 925, 10K, 12K, etc., absolutely, that's how you want to describe it. Make sure to verify if there's any further markings. However, some things say 10K, but it'll say GF behind it. Well, that means it's gold filled. It's not solid 10 karat gold, or it could be something that's gold plated. So checking those, if you have a loop or a magnifying glass, or even just the screen on your phone, you can zoom in and have a look and see what the markings are, is hugely beneficial. Avoid guessing gemstone types unless you're someone who really, I don't know them, really knows what the gemstones are. And do your best not to weigh precious metals unless you are professionally trained to do so. If you are, that's fantastic. But if you're not, making sure those scales are calibrated properly can run into issues if we say it's one thing, or you describe it as one thing and then it ends up being a different weight than was described in the description. Sorry, I see you answering, Shauna. Thank you. Need to be an expert. Yep. Nobody needs to be an expert on taking photos. As long as they're clear, you are good to go. And then the details, of course, and then smart cataloging can, like Shauna said, can help you out with that. So finally, the last thing is something that often people forget as we're quickly going through things, and that's checking for damage. It's always best to check for damage and describe it in your in that description section. So you're letting the buyer know what kind of condition to expect. So there's no surprises, and being upfront avoids frustration and reduces refund requests later on. So an example of that could be there might be a lovely vase, but it's got a tiny little chip out of the rim of the vase. You would identify that there is a chip. You would take a photograph of it, and that lets the buyer know exactly what it is that they're bidding on. So there's no surprise when they come to pick it up. Now, next is measurements. So I would say that measurements are something that most buyers reach out to us the most to find out. So every opportunity to put in a measurement, we suggest that you do take it. It does take a little extra time, but it will give you huge benefits in the end. Not only does it identify to a buyer what kind of vehicle to bring, it also helps them establish, is this piece going to fit in the space that I want to put it in? And that will just help bidding as well too. So for furniture and art, you see some furniture on the screen, measure it in inches. So it goes width, depth, and height for furniture. And then for art, it's height and width. I see another question. Do you test it? Catherine, if you have time to test it, again, it all depends on, I guess, the timeline for your auction, how quickly things need to be done. If you can test it, by all means, I would test it because then you know that it works. Most sellers will be aware if something works or not. The only time this comes into play where it's a little bit dicey is if it's, say, someone who hasn't lived in the home. Maybe it's a family member or an executor. They may not be fully aware if something works or not. If you have the time to test it, fantastic, but that is a bit labor intensive. So that's why we suggest putting untested in part of the description, if that answers your question. And I think the last thing that I forgot to mention on this one, you'll see a picture of a rug. Rugs are measured in feet, not inches. And a quick tip for rugs, I'm sure probably most of you know this already, but oftentimes if you flip over the underside or the corner of a rug, you might find a fact tag, which is fantastic because it can tell you how the rug was constructed. It'll probably tell you the materials used for the rug. And oftentimes it will actually tell you the measurements as well too, so you don't have to whip out the big tape measure and start measuring. So that's super helpful if they've kept it on the back of the rug. Sometimes it's gone. The other questions? Okay. Hi, Karen. I missed saying hello to you. I'm sorry. TVs and monitors. So use the model number on the back sticker. This was something I wasn't aware of before I joined the auction team several years ago. The sticker on the back has the first 2 digits are the screen size. So that's super helpful, again, as opposed to taking out the measuring tape and measuring. So you can use that as a guide. And then jewelry, not everyone does this, but I do recommend that it's a good idea because oftentimes people are bidding for themselves, especially when it comes to jewelry. So if you can include the chain lengths and even more importantly, the ring sizes when possible. Sometimes you can just get like a cheap little ring sizer and be able to tell how what the size of the rings are. You're opening it up to more bidders because most people won't bid on something if they don't know if it's going to fit them or not. And so that gives you the opportunity for somebody not just who's maybe purchasing to resell or, you know, melt something down. You're looking at another subsection of bidders who might want to buy a piece of jewelry for themselves or a family member even. So knowing those sizes is very helpful. Any questions other than on any of the things for the descriptions? Everybody okay? Those of you who came in a little bit later, not to worry. Everything is recorded, so you'll get a recording afterwards. So you'll be able to go through the entire webinar and have a listen to it. So next up is pickup categories. These are included in your description. So add the pickup category letter. So you can see on the screen, we've got A through Z. I won't go into detail on every single one, but as you can see, it shows which ones are small, and then we cascade up into larger and larger items based on those pickup categories. So we do this so in especially dense areas or auctions where things might be hidden behind other things, or it's a great big huge china cabinet, but it's filled with all the small lots. Those lots are going to be category A because you need those moved out before you actually sell the entire unit, which could be a C or a category D. Depends on how many lots are in your auction. If you decide to use lot D and E as part of your pickup categories. And then finally, lot Z is a little bit on its own, but it's just to identify if it's something large. So they may need to contact, the buyer may need to contact the seller to make arrangements to remove the lot. So an example of this could maybe be a stair lift. Sometimes it's a piano, depending on where it is. It's generally something quite large that needs to have other alternate arrangements made to have it leave the premises. So a quick recap for descriptions. Double check spelling. So grammar and autocorrect. Grammar, fine, but autocorrect is sometimes not your friend. And it will do some funky things and put words in that are not what you were expecting. So it's always best to double check spelling and grammar. And then the more accurate and informative your title is and your description, the more confident your buyers will be because they will 100% understand what it is that they're bidding on since they can't physically touch it. They're only viewing it. So summing up this section, a clear and concise lot title gets the attention from the bidder, and then a detailed factual description helps build that confidence. So the two of them together will help drive bids. It'll help reduce issues on the back end and then deliver a professional experience for everybody. So now I'm going to go through what the pickup process is like. So this is the last part of your auction. So it's one of the most critical, sometimes it's overlooked, but to have a successful auction, you want it bookended from beginning to end. So you're set up all the way through to your pickup. So a pickup day is where everything comes together. It's the final interaction with the buyer, the day that your client and obviously you highly anticipate, and it's your chance to leave a lasting impression for everyone. So a very professional, organized pickup, again, goes back to building trust, preventing any issues, and encourages repeat business for your business, and then obviously for MaxSold as well too. So we'll go through the steps involved in a pickup. So before the pickup, in terms of prepping, it's usually a one-day event. It lasts anywhere from about 3 to 8 hours. Again, it depends on the size of your auction and how many lots you have. Pardon me. You or your team should arrive about 30 minutes or so early to walk the site, identify any risks, confirm all the lots are there where they should be, because you want to make sure that you're prepped and ready for those buyers who are coming to pick up what they've won because they're very excited about it. So on the screen, you'll notice we do have recommendations for basic guidelines on staffing. So 0 to 90 lots, if it's a smaller auction, you might only need about 2 people. One of those individuals might be yourself, depends on your business, if you have a team helping you or not. 90 to 130, we recommend about 3, and so on and so on. One thing to note though, these numbers may need to increase or decrease depending on the site. Usually it would be increase, and it also could increase based on the site if it's a condo, because then you want to have one individual in the lobby area checking in and greeting people as they enter, and then you might need someone else in an elevator, et cetera, until they get up to the unit. Before the event, we call them team leads. You can call them whatever you want, but a team lead or a point of contact person should print off invoices, or you can pull them up on your device. If you don't want to print off a bunch of paper, that's fine, and sort them by the last name. So that way you have a quick alphabetical glance of who it is that's coming to pick up. So as you check them in, it makes things a little bit easier. And then the other part to this is to not to forget to reference the sitemap that it was created during the cataloging. So for those who might have joined the call a little bit later on, I quickly talked about as you're doing your cataloging at the client's home, you can put up little notes on doorways or specific to rooms, letting you know what the lot range is. It goes from, 145 to 192 within this room. So it's very easy when it comes to pickup to identify where something is. High value invoices, or, do you provide? Yes, we do. So that's, Catherine, done through your CS support person. They can help you with signage and look after that for you. High value invoices. So anything over $300, that list that I was talking about, the invoice list, you should highlight that or put a star beside it, because those buyers will need to show additional ID. Anything under $300, we're not concerned about, but once we hit that $300 mark, I'll talk about it in a minute, we do want additional ID from that individual to make sure that it's going to the right person. So best practices for success and pro tips to keep that day running smoothly. Catherine, you were asking about signage. So set up signage just before the event starts to prevent any early arrivals. You don't want it out too early. Use safe places like an oven, a fridge, or maybe even on your person to store high value items like jewelry or coins. We suggest this because you don't necessarily want it sitting out in view of everyone, especially if it's something high value. You want to be able to secure it in an area that you or your team know about, or you actually have it on you so you know where it is at all times. Keep your layout clear and efficient. So you want your, as best as possible, to have like a clean entry and exit from the home or business or wherever it is that you're holding your auction pickup. And then we get to team roles. So as mentioning a lead or point of contact, there really are two main roles at a pickup depending on the size. So that point of contact person greets customers as they arrive. They assign staff, or what we call runners, who then take that individual to go collect their lot. And that point of contact person really should be the only individual that is managing any customer service issues on site. So that could be maybe it's a broken or a missing item, or someone's wanting to discuss, a partial refund for something because they've identified something is not as they expected. It's best to keep that to one individual so there's no confusion going on and people making different decisions at the site, because we need that information after the fact to help close out the sale. So the lead holds that master invoice list. They look after refunds, and then they submit what's called a seller pickup report within 24 hours after the pickup. So that's the lead. Then you have what we call runners or staff. So runners escort buyers to their lots, and most importantly, they make sure that no buyer is ever left alone or unattended on the site, because we want to make sure that we're keeping close tabs on the seller's property and home, and there are individuals who are just sort of wandering around. During the pickup, so when buyers arrive, like I mentioned, they check in with that lead or point of contact at a designated entrance. Make sure that whoever that individual is, they're very visible. So it's clear, like, okay, I'm going to this person right here and they're going to check me in, and then off I go. It just speeds things up. Ask for the person's last name and invoice number, which is in the top right corner of their invoice. So they'll oftentimes show it to you on their phone, which is totally fine. Some people go ahead and print it off, and that's totally fine too, but you're going to see it sort of up in the top right-hand corner if it's on their device. Check them off on your master list and then assign them to a runner if your auction is large and you have multiple people helping you out. Buyers should be escorted at all times, like I mentioned, because you're responsible for the seller's premises. So we want to make sure that everything there is all okay. Taking a moment to talk about pre-packing. So this question comes up quite a lot. We have a lot of people who pre-pack items for their buyers, which seems like it would speed things up, but sometimes it actually does not. So we recommend, honestly, that it's not necessary and that you shouldn't do it. it will honestly save you time in the long run, packing up materials and things and using extra packing material to get ready for that pickup day. Buyers are actually responsible for bringing their packing supplies and expecting their own lots before they leave. So even though it seems helpful by wrapping everything up, that's now taking them extra time to unwrap it, look at it, make sure it's what they were expecting, and then wrapping it back up again. So by leaving them unwrapped and letting them inspect, this can also help reduce disputes, refund requests after they've left the site, because we want them to check it when it's there, and ensures that they're satisfied with what it was that they received prior to leaving. When setting up a client auction, do we place our account or the client account? That you can decide. This would be an Andrew question, and Andrew's not with me today. Your CS rep can coach you on that. I believe it could be either, just depending on how you want it set up. But to be completely honest, that's a question for partner support. So Catherine, if you want me to have someone reach out to you afterwards, or if you already know who your rep is, I can let them know that you have a question. Okay, perfect. So setting up client. Sorry, just making a note. All right, we'll make sure someone connects with you, Catherine. No, listen, don't apologize for questions. We want the we want the questions. And as well, at the end of all of this, if anybody has any feedback they want to send in after they receive their Zoom recording, we want to make sure that we're covering as much as possible, but not going too quickly. But if there are things that maybe were not included in the webinar or the training resources that you think would be beneficial, by all means, let us know. We're here to support you. So we want to make sure that we've covered as much as we possibly can to set you up for success. So we talked about pre-packing. The other, I'm going to say bonus points. You can't always do it, but it's great if you can. If you can stage an area sort of off to the side, so it's not in traffic's way, for people to look at their items prior to leaving the site, that's an A+ experience for individuals, because it lets them quickly look at it. It's not holding up a line. They're not trying to do like they might do it inside the home, which is fine. But if it's something small, like some of those A lots that are just like quick little items, having them have a space to be able to look at it is super helpful. So I was talking about $300 invoices. So for any invoice over 300, we do require two things for you to check. One of those is a photo ID, and then the other is the credit card that they use for the purchase. So just to be super clear, this is a visual check only. You don't need to take copies or photographs of anybody's ID or card information. It's just to verify that it's going with the right individual, because pickups can get busy and things can happen, and you just want to make sure if you have a customer question why you're doing that, that's a good way of going about it and saying, we just want to make sure that the item is going with the appropriate person. We would hate for, somebody's purchase or winnings to go to someone else by accident. So this is why we're verifying. If someone else is picking up on the buyer's behalf, they should have notified Maxwold ahead of time and ideally have a copy of the required ID and card. And Maxwold would reach out to you to let you know that, hey, so-and-so's brother-in-law or whoever it is coming to pick it up instead. Here is this individual's name. Handling issues and refunds. So sometimes things go wrong. A lot could be missing. Something gets damaged during the pickup or before pickup even starts, or the buyer isn't satisfied for some reason, excuse me. So in these cases, that lead that I was mentioning, or point of contact, if you want to call them that, is really the only person who should manage that process in terms of discussing whether a refund is applicable, any issues with the buyer, coming to an agreement and putting it clearly in the report. So stay calm and professional. The situations are rare, but sometimes they can be a little bit sensitive. So in terms of further information about refunds, highly recommend that you check out the partner support teachable modules specifically on that. as a reference guide, because there's far more detail in there than I can do in the course of a call today. And if you have any further questions from that, we'd be happy to answer them for you and help you out. So a quick example of this would be handling refund at a pickup. Say it's in a misidentified precious metal. So buyer comes to pick up a lot. In the title and description, it's stated that it's sterling silver, like a sterling silver flatware set. But upon looking at it, the buyer suspects the items are not sterling silver, but instead silver plate, which can be a fairly common mistake. So buyer identifies there's an issue. They may approach other staff if you have other individuals working for you, express concern. They want to talk to somebody about it. So this is where we say it's best to silo those individuals to one person. So staff shouldn't attempt to resolve it on their own or make any refund amount promises, because that could make it difficult for you having the conversation afterwards, or offer any kind of compensation themselves. They should direct them to that point of contact and say, like, you know, we have a buyer with a concern. Can you have a look at this, or can you please assist them? And then that's where you would take over from there, or whoever your lead person is. So they inspect the item with the buyer. They confirm if there's a listing error or not. And then the lead would agree if it qualifies as a valid refund issue. So if the buyer wants to keep the item despite the issue, the lead should offer a partial refund. If the buyer chooses to decline the entire lot because they were under the impression that it was sterling silver and then it turns out that it's not, that's considered a cataloging error. So they would need to leave it behind, and then a full refund would be approved. One important note for pickups is no cash refunds should be issued on site or exchange of cash, because we need records on the buyer's account of what actually transpired. So we recommend no exchanging of monies on site as best as possible. Excuse me. So the last thing for this example that I'm giving is the lead point of contact would document all this on the seller pickup report. So that would be things like the buyer's name, what the auction invoice number was and the lot number that was in question, or there was an error, what the refund decision was it partial refund or a full refund, how much the refund was actually, like the actual amount, and then the reason for the refund. So in this case, it would be misidentified as sterling silver. So that tells us, oh, oops, because people make mistakes, it happens. Whether the item was picked up or left behind. And then the last thing for pickup day is a final site walkthrough. So before you leave the site, make sure to remove all the signage. Do a final walkthrough to check for any unclaimed lots. So this is super helpful. You may delegate that to somebody else to do, but it's best for someone to go through the site and make sure there's nothing left behind, whether accidentally or maybe somebody didn't show up to pick up and it's still sitting there. Make notes directly on your invoice report, that piece of paper that I was talking about, because this will help you fill out your final report. So this is like an exit checklist. It ensures nothing's left behind. Everybody knows exactly what's been picked up and what hasn't. And then it helps us close things out for you on the other end without having to reach out and have back and forth communication about, you know, is this still sitting there? Do you remember seeing this, et cetera, et cetera. After the pickup, so this is where we're wrapping everything up. You might think the job is done. It's not quite done yet. There's one final step that I mentioned, and that's that seller managed pickup report. So this step ensures that we close out the auction properly, we resolve any outstanding issues, give buyers and sellers a clean and professional experience. And so using this pickup reporting form, this is how we manage to do all that. So the key for this is it should be completed and submitted within 24 hours of pickup, because that will just help expedite everything else. Make sure to identify all the necessary information. So it's going to ask you several things. So there's details like how an overall summary of how the pickup went. Were there any buyer issues? So people who didn't show up for whatever reason. Maybe there was a behavior concern with a certain buyer. Sometimes that happens. Items that were left behind. So whether accidentally or it was somebody who had a no-show. Lots that were eligible for refunds. So it's very clear to us, okay, this partner has said, hey, yes, I I've acknowledged that there's a refund for this item, go ahead. And then options for alternate pickups. So for anything over $750, we do ask that the seller offer 2 alternate pickup times, if at all possible. We know there's some times that maybe that's not in the cards, but generally speaking, what we're trying to do is facilitate having your client move that item out, which was the expectation in the first place. And sometimes things happen and people can't arrive for a pickup. It's not routine. It doesn't happen, at every single auction, but it can happen sometimes. So then once you've wrapped up, take a few minutes to complete the pickup report. It's pretty quick. The sooner it's submitted, the smoother everything goes for yourself, the seller, and the buyers, and it closes everything out and completes the loop. And it's absolutely a crucial part of delivering a professional experience. So it's the last chapter in your auction story. When it's done really well, it leaves buyers happy, sellers are satisfied, of course you're satisfied as well too, and ensures your auction runs smoothly from start to finish. And that is all I have. That's the end of the webinar. What happens if someone does not pick up? So if someone doesn't pick up, you would put that in your report. We would reach out to that buyer to find out what happened. There is a fee as well for those who do not come and pick up. And then what was your other 2 item? I'm not reading this right, sorry. Items and paid amount. Sorry, Michelle, I'm not sure about the second part of your question. That's my fault. I don't think I'm reading it properly. Was the second part about, oh, sorry. Okay, so items sold and not picked up. So again, you would put that in your report. Technically speaking, anything left behind reverts back to the seller owner of the items, and they make a decision about what they want to do with it. But having that information in the report to say, hey, this was sold, this person was a no-show, they never showed up. If it's that 750 that I was mentioning, we want to try to facilitate something so they could have an alternate time to come pick it up. But that's why it's so important to put that in your report to let us know this individual didn't show. We didn't hear anything from them on our end, and then we follow up with that buyer. The monies that were already paid. So if they've already paid for the item, Shauna, help me out with this one. I'm having a menopausal moment. If the item is already paid for, that still goes to the seller. I'm trying to think of a scenario. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Shauna. Basically what I just said, but in a roundabout way that I said it. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Shauna. Is the premium 80%? No, that is done, Catherine. That's done by Maxsold. So the premium is a Maxsold set premium. Does anybody else have any other questions? If there's something I can't answer, by the way, I will make sure to partner with someone who can answer it for you. Anybody else? Okay. Like I was mentioning earlier, we'll send the webinar recording out to you in the next 24 hours. Feedback always welcome. So please, if there's something that we didn't talk about, or as you go through the teachable modules, they're very quick. You can break them up into sections. You don't have to necessarily go through the whole thing in one shot. Most of the modules are about 5 minutes or less each. So if there's any feedback on those, absolutely welcome that. If there's things that you would like to see. So obviously our aim is to support you in your journey as a partner. So elevating that experience for you and your team and your clients is something we want to do. So appreciate you making time to come today. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you got a lot out of it.
Thank you, Heather.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for attending.
Of course. Have a great day.
Bye, Susan.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Michelle. Catherine. Have a good afternoon, everyone.